We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
International wranglings over Ukraine, rising inflation, and poll numbers that defy gravity. Perhaps it's time to ask if President Joe Biden is really out of his depth. Is the president fit for purpose? And if not, how likely is he to be up to the task in 1 year's time, or 2, or even 3? Well, to examine the evidence and sort fact from fiction, we're joined by longtime host of this here Liberty Nation Radio and senior political analyst, Mr. Tim Donner. Welcome back to the show, Tim.
Always a pleasure, Mark.
So my first question has to be the obvious one. Despite having a huge team of DC insiders at his beck and call, Joe Biden appears completely out of his depth. Now, would you say that this is a true statement, or is the reality a little more nuanced?
Well, it would have been interesting to see, Mark, how he did before he was in cognitive decline. In other words, he ran for president twice before, in 1988 and in 2008. And it would have been interesting to see how he did that because he was very gregarious. He was very, he's high energy, was outspoken on things. He was a classic career politician. Now he seems to be a shell of what he used to be because of his cognitive decline. And Mark, I would say this, there's a reason that he bombed out the first 2 times that he ran for president. The public didn't take to it, just like Kamala Harris bombed out in her one attempt to become president. Neither one of them made it past the first primary when they ran for president, Biden and Harris. But in addition to that, Mark, Biden was never challenged in his Senate races. He was never under pressure. He doesn't know how to deal with it. He was handed the vice presidency by Barack Obama for a career that looked like it was fading into obscurity because of his own failure in 2008. Since then, it's been all downhill since 2008. I think he's never had to deal with the pressure that he now feels. He was handed, in effect, the presidency because he bombed out again in the primaries in 2020, but because the party stepped in and basically drove everyone else out of the race. He was handed the nomination, and then he was handed voting laws that were changed to the point of, airdropping unsolicited mail-in ballots. And the voting laws were so favorable that he was basically handed the presidency while he was hiding in the basement because of COVID. So this is a guy who's never had to deal with really being in charge of anything, never had to deal with the pressure, and now we can see why he failed so badly, I suppose, in his first 2 attempts to become president.
Yeah, a lot of people are suggesting that he's kind of choked under the pressure. Now, you wrote an article on Liberty Nation recently about some polling numbers regarding Biden's physical, and presumably this includes mental capability in doing the job as commander-in-chief. Care to give us a brief analysis on these numbers?
Well, in summary, it's shocking, Mark, that the number of people who believe that the president of the United States is healthy, up to the job, physically fit, mentally fit, is alarmingly low. And it doesn't matter whether it's Trump on the right or Biden on the left. It's not a good sign when the population of the country doesn't believe that the president is up to the job. It's a 29-point swing in the question of whether Joe Biden is healthy over the last year. Only 40% of the people in the latest Politico Morning Consult poll believe that Biden's in good health. 50% don't. And it's a 21-point reversal on the question of him being specifically mentally fit, as a majority of the people polled believe he is not mentally fit for the job. Now, this is in 2 recent polls, because there was another Harvard-Harris poll that also showed, incredibly, by a 5% margin, Americans believe that Joe Biden is too old to be president. Well, they knew how old he was when they voted for him. So, Mark, a lot of this is on the voters, honestly.
Well, some of it may be on the voters, but what about the media? Because it seems more than ever that the Fourth Estate, it had its 30 pieces of silver. They backed Joe Biden from the start. They ignored scandal after scandal. They buried the Hunter Biden laptop story. They poo-pooed every accusation that he was past his prime. And now we have the modern state of play in America, where even a Biden-friendly cable news network has to admit that things are not going well, which seems to be the limit of their disapproval. Now, one word that we always talk about in relation to journalism is accountability. Will the media ever be held accountable, or even hold themselves accountable for perpetrating what many rational people now seem to feel is a confidence trick?
Well, I think it was a wake-up call for the media, Mark. When when the pullout from Afghanistan occurred, they couldn't believe that this guy was as incompetent as he showed himself to be with this withdrawal from Afghanistan, which, by the way, I don't think he's ever going to recover. His image, his branding is never going to recover from what happened with Afghanistan. I think they were shocked because it never occurred to them that he could be that incompetent because, of course, Mark, he's been roaming the corridors of Capitol Hill for almost 50 years. So they figured, well, he must be competent. He keeps getting elected. He was chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee and all this stuff. And so they didn't give it a thought to basically throw their entire journalistic credibility away to get him elected. Of course, that was a culmination of a 4-year period in which they gave away something, Mark, they'll never be able to recover, which is their journalistic credibility. They threw it away. They sacrificed it at the altar of taking down Donald Trump by whatever means availed themselves. And they succeeded at it. And I don't think it really ever occurred to him that they could be this incompetent. And no, of course, they're not going to take any accountability for it. And I think their way of assuaging their guilt is to actually, as I call it, commit journalism on the Biden administration. They're going to actually run a few stories to try and prove that they can actually cover this guy with some semblance of objectivity, which they were completely unable or unwilling to do with Donald Trump.
Final question for you, Tim, if I may. With congressional elections less than a year out, subtle campaigning and some not so subtle campaigning is underway. And now usually parties would be campaigning on their guy or their gal, depending. But it seems reality has flipped, and we're living in a topsy-turvy world where Democrats only want to talk about a Republican leader, presumably Donald Trump at this point, and Republicans only want to talk about Joe Biden. Now, is this a coming trend? Is this going to be something that do you think we see in election after election as things become so polarized?
Well, I think it depends. If you have a president that's at about the 48 to 50% approval, he becomes neither an asset or a liability. If he's in the low 40s, he's a liability. If he's above 50, he's an asset. So you use the president according to, his approval at any particular point in time. I think that the Democrats do the Republicans a big favor by talking about Donald Trump, because right now people are comparing the actual record of Donald Trump to the record of Joe Biden, which is just where Trump and Republicans want to be. They want people to compare the records, and by Democrats, and admittedly, they have nothing else to go on. They have nothing else because it's been such a disaster. The losing streak for Joe Biden has gone on since Afghanistan, and it's unbroken. So, it seems to me that all they have is to scare people about Donald Trump, but in doing so, they're going to remind people of the Donald Trump era when we had a roaring economy, low unemployment, and America was open for business, and foreign actors didn't try to take advantage of us. The direct head-to-head comparison, Mark, I think is only going to serve Trump and Republicans well.
It will be almost a battle of the Titans come 2024. Tim Donner, thank you ever so much.
Very much enjoyed it, Mark. Thanks.
You're listening to Liberty Nation Radio, heard across the Radio America network from our flagship station in the nation's capital, WWRC in Washington, D.C. Remember, you can tune in for Liberty Nation from 2 to 3 p.m. Sunday on KBKW 103.5 FM 14:50 a.m., the talk of Grace Harbor. Later down the road, we tackle abortion in the Supreme Court on Talking Liberty. But after this short break, we'll be right back to figure out just how confident Stacey Abrams is of winning the Georgia gubernatorial this time around. And will race and anger be at the center of her campaign? Don't go anywhere. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides. Who are we? We are Americans that believe in liberty. We are a project of the nonprofit One Generation Away. We are patriots who apply the founding principles to the issues of today.
And they keep moving the goalposts on us.
We are educators and commentators who love America and the Constitution. Who are we? We are Liberty Nation.